Welcome to the Rich Mind Podcast.
Yeah, we are back again. We're rolling. Rich Mind Podcast. Welcome, folks. Welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about a subject that is, I think this is going to be super interesting. Greg is actually going to share another article we reached out and found talking about IQ. And the way the article was written, the way I read it, it's almost like it's almost putting the importance of IQ over another specific topic. And that's where I'm going to turn it over to Greg. What was this one about, Greg? I think this is going to be a lot of fun for folks as we get along in this conversation today.
Yeah, so this article, the title of the article is Why IQ Matters More Than Grit. So grit is that one thing that the author is comparing IQ to. And we're going to really dive into this article. Talk about IQ, EQ, which is emotional intelligence, and then also probably talk a little bit about college. Do you need to be, a college graduate to be successful? Different paths you can take. So it's going to be it's going to be a fun conversation and kind of bounce around between those ideas that, kind of come together in the end.
So folks, you may or may not know about me is that I'm not a huge advocate of college in general. I have 3 kids. They're all in that college age right now. And I never pushed any of them to go to school. I've encouraged them to continue on with their education, their self-education, and we'll get into that in a subject in a future episode. But I've never is probably too strong of a word. I've struggled to find like the amount of money, income, cash that it takes to like get these college degrees for what you receive in return, right? I'm looking at it as an investment that I don't necessarily see the return. And that's why I haven't pushed my kids into the idea of going to school. As another example is that I went to school twice and I dropped out twice because once I was there, I realized that this isn't for me. So that's where the IQ part comes in. That's why this article, when you first read it, is like, yeah, we need to talk about that because I'm not the most intelligent person in the whole wide world, meaning, you put me on a Jeopardy stage and I'm going to fail. But as far as like the grit and the determination and the persistence, those kind of things, yeah, I fall into that camp. And this article is talking the exact opposite of that. So I was like, yeah, it fired me up when I first read that. Just even that headline, I was like, yeah, I'm not sure if I agree with that. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, it's funny because I come from the other side where, I grew up in a family where my dad, he went to night school and he got his college degree and he went on to be, a successful banker. And then my older brother went to college. My older sister went to college. And I was just like, well, I'm going to go to college because that's what, my siblings did. And I did. I went to college and I had a great time. I went from New York to Arizona and it was a lot of fun. I made some great friends, great memories. I definitely learned, a little bit, but to say I needed my college degree to do what I'm doing now, that's not true. I thought I did. I was kind of, groomed to have that idea in my head of, well, in order to be successful, you need to go to college. Well, that might be true if you're, a doctor or a lawyer, because I don't think you can become a doctor without the proper, education, certifications, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yes, I agree with that.
But yeah, from what we're talking about, in the business world, entrepreneurial world, a college degree does not mean success. It could mean success, doesn't guarantee it. It might be helpful, it might not. And knowing what I know now about college as a 44-year-old, aside from having the fun and meeting friends and everything, if I had the opportunity to not go to college and take that money and start a business or start investing in real estate, I definitely would have done the latter, no doubt in my mind. So it's just kind of funny how 20 years later, 25 years later, how, your mindset shifts, your life experiences kind of dictate that as well. And I know, a family member of mine, he went to college, I think for 6 months or a year, and he's like, this is not for me. I want to go to a trade school. He went to a trade school and now he's successful, he's happy, and, he just made the right decision for himself. So so it's definitely a personal decision. And like you said, college doesn't mean success. Exactly.
So the whole skill, like you said about even the trade school, I'm yes, 100% about those kinds of things. So that's where when I was 20-ish, even when I'm 50 now, I still don't know what I want to do or what I want to become, right? I'm still trying to figure that out. But when I was 20, ish, right? Going through that first initial phase of college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like you said, I was there to have fun, and I did too much at times, right? That's a whole nother story for another day. But I didn't. So that experience piece, I guess, is probably the one thing that I regret's not the right word, but I wish that my kids could experience by going to college, right? That fun, like you said, the friends, the games, that type of thing is a great experience. But when it relates to what we're talking about here on the Rich Mind podcast, that's where I just want to push back with it a little bit, to think that you have to go to school in order to become an entrepreneur, or to become a successful business owner, or to be great at marketing, or to start a podcast, or to create a personal brand. We talked about branding in the last episode. If you have questions about that, as far as the branding, folks, just a reminder, send us an email at info@richmind.co with a subject line of brand, and we'll go into more detail with you if you have any questions about creating your own personal brand. But with this episode, I want to make sure that you understand, or just are aware, that you don't need a big college degree hanging on the wall to be successful out here in the business world. I was actually fumbling through social media last night, and a friend of mine that I went to high school with, her daughter is, I believe it said that she was getting ready to become a junior in college, or maybe is a junior in college. And in her statement, it said that, once she gets done with this degree, the world is hers, was her word. And I'm like, I don't think that's accurate. Meaning, I don't, like you said, maybe she's becoming a doctor. Maybe she's becoming something that's specialized. So I think maybe that's the thing to keep in mind too. If it's a specialization that requires a lot of education, that's different. I'm talking about just a basic general education studies type of degree. If you're going to go to school for that, I don't think that that's accurate. And to think that this young lady that's getting ready to graduate in a year and a half from now is going to have the world at her fingertips because of this college degree, I don't think that that's accurate. So the article talked about grit. When I say grit, what do you think about when I say grit?
So grit to me is, just doing the hard work, the determination, persevering, busting through those roadblocks that are going to be in your way as an entrepreneur, because that's the way the world works. I mean, there's roadblocks in every aspect of life, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. But that's what grit means to me, is just having the fortitude to say, you know what, this might slow me down, but I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to get through this, and I'm going to learn from it, and it's never going to hold me back again, because, I've learned from it, and I've seen how to avoid that mistake in the future. What comes to mind when grit enters your mind? Yeah,
100%. So when you jump out here on your own, when you're just kind of trying to figure it out on your own, you've got to work through mistakes. You've got to work through fumbles. One thing I think that when we are going through school, and this is even in grade school, we're taught that failing is bad. Like, failing is a bad thing. You don't want to fail. You don't want to get the big red X on your paper, or the big F or D, or whatever those grades I used to get on my papers. We won't go to, that's a whole other subject again. But the point is that we're like taught at a young age that we don't want to fail. But when we're out here on our own, that's what it is. We're continuously failing all the time. We try new things. It works or it doesn't. You don't want to put everything. I mean, it's not like you're gambling and pushing everything, your chips all on the table, right? To lose everything. But at the same time, you're testing things. With the podcast, we're testing different things. With branding, I'm testing different things. With having these conversations with you, it's always a test to see if it's going to pass or fail. And the way we know that is from our audience. Same thing when you're in business. It's either your sales are increasing or decreasing. It's either you have good customer service or bad customer service. It's like you're always trying to improve upon, but failure isn't negative. So yeah, that's been probably the biggest takeaway that I've had to learn on my own when I've come out here now, is to think that it's not black and white. It's not right or wrong. There's a lot of gray area in terms of trying to become an entrepreneur and be successful at the same time.
Yeah. And just kind of piggybacking off of that, failure, like you said, in school is, I totally agree with your point of view, because, we're going to fail in life a lot. And it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that whatever you're working on didn't work, and you need to find another way.
Yeah, it's not a personal thing. It's not, I'm not a failure. It's an event. It's a moment in time that didn't work the way you had planned. Yep. Anyways, please continue. I just wanted to put that in there as well.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I got from school was, I remember in grade school and high school is, no working together. You have to work alone. You have to get your own individual score on the test, and then you get, whatever, you get an A or a B or a C, or it doesn't matter, right? But then when I went to college, I got into some of these communication classes, and they, put us in a group of 4 people and say, "Are you going to create this project? You're going to create a business and do the marketing." And I was like, "Oh, we're working together. We're not working against each other." And that's the way entrepreneurship is. Even if you're a solo entrepreneur, right? Back in my realtor days, when I thought I was a solo entrepreneur, I wasn't. I was working with other people, other realtors, believe it or not. And we had the same goal. So that's one thing that in grade school and high school, I wish I could unwind a little bit quicker in my life of, you don't need to do this on your own. It's actually better to do this with others because, you're going to bring, Randy, you're going to bring a lot more different experience than I'm going to bring to the table. And collectively, we can move a lot quicker, create a better podcast or content. So I say failure and working alone in schools. Those are the 2 things that, were probably ingrained in our brains a little bit too much. And in the real world, I think it's the opposite.
100%. It's the opposite. If you think about the biggest brands or the biggest companies, biggest podcasts, there's individuals, but it's the team around that. So that maybe that's part of the conversation today. You've got to think about a team that you're going to build around you. Now, some of that team at first can be virtual team, meaning it can be software. It can be AI being new these days. I mean, you can have a personal assistant, and it's a computer or it's a software program or it's a whatever, but it can help you in that process of thinking that you have to come up with things on your own all the time. I did that for the longest time. I struggled with thinking that if I don't do this on my own, then I'm not putting forth all the effort, right? Or I'm not giving it my best or something like that. It's like you almost feel like you force yourself into thinking that I have to do this on my own. And you're right. That's 100% not an accurate thought. So definitely want to encourage you folks out there today. Don't think that you're not doing this alone. You're not doing this alone. It can be lonely. I hear that all the time about entrepreneurship, right? You're lonely. For example, I've got you on my screen here with me today, Greg, but at the same time, when I'm recording on my own, creating content, a lot of times I'm sitting in this room by myself, right at my desk. It can be lonely. There could be days that go by that I don't, other than my family, my immediate family that live here in the house, you don't see anybody. You don't necessarily talk to anybody. So you almost have to be proactive at that as well. Any thoughts about that? We have our calls every couple of weeks. And now that we're recording more often, we're going to be seeing each other a lot more often. But between those times, it's like it can be a lonely place.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think, since the, COVID and everything where we were, kind of forced into our houses and stuff, I definitely have that thought of the loneliness. But yeah, you do have to be a little bit more, like you said, just mindful and proactive of going outside and talking to people, or even having a conversation when you're, at the post office or whatever, not just go in there and buy your stamps or whatever, have a conversation with the person just to have that interaction. So, and the other thing that you kind of sparked in that, in what you said, taking courses and going to mastermind and live events, that's where you actually, you obviously interact with other people, which is great, but, that's where you really connect with others as well to, get away from feeling like a solopreneur.
Agreed. So that was exactly the same thought that was going to my mind as well, because that's where going to these conferences, right? That's where you and I met. Mm-hmm. You meet people from all different walks of life, from all over the country. Yes, there is an investment up front. You need to travel. You need to do all of these things, but the return on that investment. So when you're transacting in the world, folks, start thinking about it's an investment. You're investing in your future. You're investing in your relationships. If you can kind of flip that on its head and realize that, yes, I get it. It's going to cost a little bit of cash. It's going to cost a little bit of time. But had I not shown up in Nashville, Tennessee 2 years ago and had the time that I had with Greg Junge, we would not be having this conversation here today. The businesses that we're going to create together, the relationship that we've built together. He's had me down at his house, his home. He's invited me into his home, and we've somewhat vacationed. He wasn't vacationing because it was at his house, but it was a vacation for me down in Florida when it's cold up here in Indiana. The point being is that, yeah, it's a little bit of an investment, but that kind of helps with the loneliness. You find folks with similar interests that you can stay in contact with. That's been super important for me. Once again, I did not realize that when I first started. I was out here just trying to grind, figure it out, right? Push through the grit. That's where I believe that grit is very important, because you've got to push through the tough times, because you're going to continuously run up into these seemingly, they feel like failures, but they're just learning lessons. They're just moments in time that you just got to keep stepping forward, stepping into that. That's where that grit part comes in. That's where I'm not 100% sure that the IQ piece versus the grit. I mean, I'm not saying you can be stupid to be stupid and just with grit, you can be successful. But at the same time, I don't think that the lack of IQ is going to keep you from being successful if you have the ability to stay in the game and just keep pushing forward.
And the biggest difference between IQ and grit, at least in my opinion, and coming from this article, it sounds like IQ is more set, like you're not going to change your IQ by studying 100 hours every week or something like that.
It did say that, right? It said like, yeah, it's like you're born with your IQ and you can't, which, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but yeah, I remember it saying that exactly, that you're born with your IQ and it's very difficult to change.
Yeah. So it sounds like IQ is a little bit more static, where, I believe grit is kind of equivalent to, being street smart, right? And how being able to read people. And that's where the EQ comes in, which is the emotional intelligence, right? And yeah, so I'd say people with, average intelligence and a lot of grit and a lot of street smarts, they can thrive as an entrepreneur if they surround themselves with the right people, ask the right questions, learn from their experiences and their failures. So that's what I like about grit, is because it's something that you can work on. And I think you can really level up in the grit area as opposed to the IQ. Any thoughts on that, Randy?
Yeah, it's almost like a muscle. It's like you build that muscle of, it's like you look for, and I don't like using the word failure, but you just look for the pivots. I like using the word pivots. I pivot a lot on the podcast. So you just look for the opportunities to embrace the pivot, embrace the change. That's to me, that's where the grit comes in. It's like you just don't stop. I made an episode, or I recorded an episode, I don't remember, a few weeks back, and it was talking about perseverance or persistence. So about persistence, but that's kind of where grit comes in. You just have to keep going. You just can't stop, and you build it like a muscle that when you come against that resistance, when it's trying to get you to stop, or when you're, whether it's something mental that's going on in your mind trying to get you to stop, or if you just physically run into a roadblock that's like you can't move forward. It's just that persistence, just that grit to keep going, to know that there are better days ahead. You'll just keep figuring it out as you go. But the thinking that you have to go to school to come up with this supposed IQ, that's where I just don't, in my experience, I just don't buy that 100%.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. And I think there's a lot of examples of people who, didn't even graduate high school or college that are huge successes.
Right.
I think one that comes to mind, I follow Steve Harvey, and I don't think he graduated high school. Don't quote me on that, and he's had some massive failures. I know he was homeless for 3 years. He was living in his car for 3 years, but he turned it around with, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a comedian because this is what I love to do. And then obviously he went into public speaking and all other business ventures. But yeah, he just had that grit and determination of nothing's going to stop me. I'm down on my luck right now, but in 3 years or 5 years, my persistence is going to pay off, and it did. So, I don't know what his IQ is, but I know his grit level is off the charts. So that's what got him where he is.
Way off the charts. And that's where just sticking to it, just had to go through the process, go through the steps, go through the reps. You need to keep pushing yourself outside your comfort zone if you want to step out into this entrepreneurial space. If you want to put your face out there, we talked about brands in the last episode. If you want to create a brand, create your personal brand, you've got to get out into the marketplace. You need to look for adding value to the marketplace. That's where a sale can happen, and that's how money is transferred from other people into your business, right? And if you've got to get beyond that mindset as well, that'll be a topic we'll talk about in the future, as far as the mindset of selling is not a bad thing. It's not. A lot of times you have the idea of selling something, you get that feeling, overwhelming feeling that it's a bad thing, and it's not. You're actually providing a value to the marketplace, and in return or in exchange, there's money exchanged. It's as simple as that. But that's like a mindset shift that comes along with, if you're just focusing on the IQ, your intelligence piece, and you don't push back on that a little bit and understand that there are just different ways of looking at life. Becoming an entrepreneur, starting a business, creating a brand, selling a product or service. Just simple things that if you can just get that mindset shift, you can really be successful out here. It takes grit. because you've got to go through those learning steps of how to do it, when to do it, what the marketplace is looking for. That's why we're always looking for feedback here on the Rich Mind Podcast. We're always trying to find different ways to add value to you. What are the questions that you're having in your journey? So that would be a great thing for you to do today. You could help us out by helping you by sending us an email again at info@richmind.co. This time the subject line would be grit. Send us your questions about the topic here today. Send us about, maybe you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur here in the upcoming year, or you've already started. Maybe your job is on the potential, to have your job be eliminated or something like that. That's what happened to me. In my retail days, I had my job basically taken out from underneath me, and I had no idea what I was going to do. But the idea is that you have the grit and the determination to figure this out in advance. And if Greg and I can help you in any way up front, right here at the beginning, we would love to do that. So yeah, info@richmind.co, subject line of grit. Send us your questions, and we'd be more than happy to try to at least answer them from our perspective, what we've learned, and what we're trying to do out there in the marketplace. So any more thoughts on that IQ versus grit today?
Yeah, the last thing I would probably leave our listeners with is just, in my opinion, IQ can't teach you how to think on your feet, how to network with others, so is mutually beneficial. Can't really teach you how to read people and understand, kind of what they're feeling, if they're interested in buying your service or product, like you mentioned earlier. So my advice would be work on your grit, because that is something that you can control and you can increase.
Love it. Mic drop right there. We're going to leave it right there. That was awesome, Greg. Appreciate that. So folks, if we can add value into your life any more than what we're trying to do here on the podcast, please let us know. We're looking for any feedback that you have to provide. We're trying to obviously come up with different subjects, different ways of delivering that value to you, as far as like the idea that I had of pushing back with some of these articles. I just wanted to find different things that were out there a little bit different. Maybe they fit into how you feel every day. Maybe you believe that your IQ or going to school and getting this college degree, it's spending ungodly amount of money, is the most important thing to become successful out there in the marketplace. And that's where today we just wanted to challenge you with that thought a little bit today. And hopefully you found some valuable information in the message. So once again, head over to richmind.co. You can grab your free 5-step guide from dead end job to entrepreneurial freedom, the 5-step guide to help you on your path to become an entrepreneur. That would be a super valuable resource for you. I recommend you head over there and grab that today. And on the next episode, we're going to talk about, this kind of the same subject line about college. A little teaser. There are degrees that I believe are super valuable. As we mentioned, if you want to become a doctor or something like that, yes, you need to go get a college degree. If I don't want to show up in the hospital and we have a guy that's a dropout, right? That's probably not a good idea. But at the same time, there are degrees out there that, they're absolutely worthless. And when I say worthless, I just mean they're not valuable in the marketplace. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. Any thoughts about that, Greg?
Yeah, no, I think that, kind of dovetails into a great conversation stemming off of this one. So it's going to be a fun one.
So as we wrap up, this episode will be coming out in the beginning of 2025. So if that younger generation will be listening to that episode, I really want you to think about your decisions. Whether you decide to go to school or not, that's obviously up to you. But making the decision, thinking about that a little bit more in depth, other than just thinking, okay, I need to go to school, or I have to go to school because XYZ, or my mom said this, or my dad said that. I just want to help try to get you to think a little bit deeper into that thought process. And we're going to discuss some of these college degrees that may not be as valuable as you think they might be. And that'll be a super fun conversation. So folks, go out there, have a fantastic day. We appreciate you being here. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice, we'd greatly appreciate that. You can check us out on YouTube as well. But yeah, we would love to hear from you. Let us know how we can try to improve how we're delivering the message here on the Rich Mind Podcast, and how it can help you in your journey to becoming a more successful self. So go out there, as I mentioned, have a fantastic day. Focus on being great. And Greg and I will be back on the next episode again very soon. Bye now.
Thank you for joining us today on the Rich Mind Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share it with someone you know. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Rich Mind Podcast on your favorite platform and never miss an episode. Want to dive deeper into transforming your financial mindset? Visit our website to download your free 5-step guide titled From Dead End Job to Entrepreneurial Freedom, designed to help you conquer your fears and start on your entrepreneurial path with confidence. One last thing. Don't ever forget that your mind is the first place where wealth is created. Keep dreaming big, take action, and together, let's build wealth, a legacy, and a life we love. Until next time.